Hello everyone, welcome to NCRT 6 to 10 class in short. Today we will be discussing the question and answers of the chapter what, where, how and when. Along with that we will be discussing some of the important MCQs with explanations. So we will begin with the textbook exercises. Question number 1 is match the following. So the questions are given. A side, Narmada Valley, Magadha, Garo Hills, Indus and its tributaries, Ganga Valley. B side, the first big kingdom, hunting and gathering, cities about 2500 years ago, early agriculture, the first cities. So first answer is hunting and gathering, that is Narmada Valley matches with hunting and gathering as the people who were settled in the Narmada Valley were skilled gatherers, it is given. Then second one is Magadha. Magadha matches with the first big kingdom, that is Magadha was a city around the southern part of Ganga Valley and it was the first big kingdom. Next one, Garo Hills. Garo Hills matches with the early agriculture as the agriculture was first started in the Garo Hills. Then next one, Indus and its tributaries matches with the first cities, that means first cities were developed around Indus and its tributaries. Then Ganga Valley, cities about 2500 years ago. Cities were developed about 2500 years ago in the Ganga Valley. So the answer comes like this. Narmada Valley hunting and gathering, Magadha the first big kingdom, Garo Hills early agriculture, Indus and its tributaries the first cities, Ganga Valley cities about 2500 years ago. Moving on to the second question, list one major difference between manuscripts and inscriptions. So manuscripts are handwritten documents written on relatively soft surfaces like palm leaves or bark of trees, while inscriptions are writings on relatively hard surfaces like stone and metal. This is the major difference between the two. Now the third one, return to Rashida's question, can you think of some answers to it? So the chapter begins with the Rashida's question that Rashida was reading a newspaper and she has found one heading 100 years ago. How she wondered, could anyone know what happened so many years ago? That was the question. So what is your answer based on the studies you have done in this chapter? That is the question. So how will you respond to this question? So you can answer it as, it's possible to know what happened 100 or 1000 years ago by learning the manuscripts or inscriptions of the olden days. It can also study it by archaeology. They also tells about the life of the olden days. This is the answer. So the next question is, make a list of all the objects that archaeologists may find. Which of these could be made of stone? So you have to list all the objects that an archaeologist can excavate from the soil, and you have to identify which of them will be made of stone. So we can answer in this way. Archaeologists may find various materials like bones, coins, ornaments, pots, pans, remains of old manuscripts and inscriptions, remains of cloths, remains of buildings, plant remains, tools, weapons and so on. And you have to identify which of them will be made of stone. So the objects made of stone will be remains of buildings, then tools, weapons, surfaces used for writing inscriptions and so on. These will be the objects that made of stone. Let's move on to the next question. Why do you think ordinary men and women did not generally record or keep the records of what they did? So it is known that king and queens are recording what they are doing, but ordinary people are not recording about their daily life events. What could be the reason? So the answer is, ordinary people did not keep a record of what they did because they did not find the events of their daily life to be recorded anywhere. Also, hiring a person to record the daily events was an expensive proposition. Moreover, the life of common people was very hard enough that they did not have enough time to get a record of the daily events. Moving on to the next question, that is sixth question. Describe at least two ways in which you think the lives of kings would have been different from those of farmers. That is, you have to describe at least two differences between the lives of kings and lives of farmers of those days? So the answer is, the kings had a luxurious life and always engaged in battles, recording their victories, while the farmers always had to work hard and would get always a very low income. So this is the major difference between the lives of kings and lives of farmers. Farmers would have to work a lot, but kings had a very luxurious life. Now the next question. Find the word craftspersons on page number 1. List at least 5 different craftsperson or crafts that you know about today. Are the craftspersons A. men, B. women, or C. both men and women? So you have to list different crafts that you know about today and who are engaging in that work. So the answer can be written as, some of the craft persons of today are scientists, musicians, artists, rulers, merchants, herders, painters, and crafters. Besides these, many more are there. Today, both men and women are craft persons, as in the present scenario, both men and women have equal rights of living. That's why both men and women are craft persons. Now the next question, that is the last question of textbook. What were the subjects on which books were written in the past? Which of these books would you like to read the most? So this question, the second part is somewhat subjective, that you have to select which book you like the most. So the answer for the first part is common, but the second part you have to write it according to your taste. Okay, so the answer for this question can be written as, in the past, several books dealt with different subjects were written. These books include religious beliefs and practices, the lives of kings, as well as science and medicine. Besides this, there were epics, poem, and plays. The answer for the second part you have to write according to your taste. So now let's discuss some of the important MCQs, multiple choice questions from this chapter. So the first question, identify the correct statements. Some of the earliest people who lived on the banks of the river Indus were skilled gatherers. Second statement, the cultivation of wheat and barley began about 8,000 years ago in the Suleiman and Kirta hills. Third statement, about 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the banks of the river Indus. Select the statements which are correct. 1 only, 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, all are correct. So let's discuss the statements. Some of the earliest people who lived on the banks of the river Indus were skilled gatherers. You have to identify whether it is true or false. On the basis of our knowledge, people who lived in the banks of river Narmada were skilled gatherers, not that of Indus. So the first statement is false. Now let's move on to the second statement. The cultivation of wheat and barley began about 8,000 years ago in the Suleiman and Kirta hills. This statement is true as per our knowledge, because about 8,000 years ago, wheat and barley were started to cultivate by the men and women in the Suleiman and Kirta hills. So next, the third statement, about 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the banks of the river Indus. This statement is true because about 4,700 years ago, earliest cities were flourished, that is started in the banks of river Indus. So the answer for this question is third one, 2 and 3 only. Statements 2 and 3 only. Now let's move on to the second question. Identify the correct statements related to tributaries. 3 statements are given. A tributary is a stream or a river that joins with another big or main river. Second statement, a tributary can join to the ocean directly. Third one, the opposite of a tributary is a distributary, a river or stream that branches off from and flows away from the main river. So you have to identify which is correct. 1 only, 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only. Let's discuss the statements first. A tributary is a stream or a river that joins with another big or main river. This statement is true. A tributary means a small river that joins with another big or main river. Then second statement, a tributary can join to the ocean directly. This statement is false because a tributary cannot join the ocean directly. That is why it is said as tributary. That means it will be joining to a particular main river and that main river will be joining to the ocean. So second statement is false. Then third one, the opposite of a tributary is a distributary, a river or stream that branches off from and flows away from the main river. This statement is true. Here the second statement is wrong, so the answer comes as 1 and 3 only. Now the third question, identify the correct statements related to inscriptions. An inscription is written on relatively hard surfaces like stone and metal. Second statement, these are handwritten records of the past and are in the form of books. Then third one, kings of the countries kept records of their victories in battles. Now answers you have to identify as 1 only, 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only. The first statement, an inscription is written on relatively hard surfaces like stone and metal. This statement is true. Then second one, these are handwritten records of the past and are in the form of books. Obviously, it cannot be said so because these inscriptions are written on stone or metal. This cannot be converted as book. It is related to, this statement is related to manuscripts, not inscriptions. Okay, so second statement is false. Then third one, kings of the countries kept records of their victories in battles. This statement is true because kings had recorded their victories in the battles. They had such a habit. Now the second statement is false, so the answer comes as 1 and 3 only. Moving on to the next question. Manuscripts are handwritten records of the past, usually written on palm leaves or the bark of trees known as birch. It was given the name manuscripts because, so 4 statements are given. You have to identify the true one. 1. All the manuscripts were recorded by Lord Manu. 2. Manu means hand in Latin and scribe means to write. Third one, Manu means hand in the Greek language. Fourth one, Manu means palm leaves in Latin. Here, option 1 is wrong. It's because it is not related to Lord Manu. Then the rest, that means Manu means hand. We have studied that Manu means hand. But in which language? That is in Latin language. Okay. So, option 2 will be the answer. Manu means hand in Latin and scribe means to write. That is the answer. Next question. Rice was first grown to the dash. Options 1. South of Indias, 2. Northeast Garo Hills, 3. North of Indias, and 4. East of Indias. So, we have studied that rice was first grown to the option 3. North of Indias. So, North of Indias will be the answer. Moving on to the next question. The area along the south of the river Ganga and its tributary Son was known as option 1. Ujjain, 2. Ayodhya, 3. Taxila, 4. Magadha. So you have to identify which is that city. So the area along the south of the river Ganga and its tributary Son was known as Magadha. We have studied it as Magadha. So option 4, Magadha will be the answer. Next question. The name Bharata was used for a group of people who lived in the northwest and who were mentioned in the dash. You have to identify in which way the group of people, that means Bharata, were mentioned. So first one, option 1 Atharva Veda, 2 Yajurveda, 3 Rig Veda, 4 Samaveda. So you have to identify in which Veda the Bharata group of people were mentioned. So it is known that this group of people are mentioned in the Rig Veda, and this name was later given for the country. So another name for India is Bharata. Bharata is a group of people mentioned in the Rig Veda. So the answer will be option 3, Rig Veda. Now the last question of today. The river Indus is also known as Sindhu in dash. In which language? That you have to identify. Option 1 Urdu, 2 Hindi, 3 Sanskrit, 4 Prakrit. So you have to identify the name Sindhu is in which language. So we have studied that the river Indus is also known as Sindhu in Sanskrit language. So option 3 Sanskrit will be the answer. That's all for today. We will be meeting in the next video. Until then, bye. Thank you.